Noam Chomsky's stands as a searing indictment of US foreign policy. Published in 1991, the book's arguments remain chillingly relevant in the 21st century. Chomsky meticulously dissects the hypocrisy at the heart of American foreign policy, the chasm between its pronouncements of freedom and its actions that often stifle genuine democracy around the globe. This essay will delve into the core tenets of Chomsky's critique. We'll explore how the US government has favored stability over true democratic values, often propping up brutal dictatorships in the name of strategic interests. Through examining historical case studies, we'll see how this pattern has played out repeatedly from Latin America to Southeast Asia. Furthermore, we'll analyze the crucial role of media in shaping public perception, often obscuring the true costs of US foreign interventions. Finally, we'll address criticisms of Chomsky's work and contemplate the enduring legacy in an age marked by ongoing debates about American power and its impact on the world stage. At the heart lies a stark contradiction. The United States, a nation that prides itself on being a beacon of democracy, has a long and troubled history of undermining democratic movements abroad. Chomsky argues that this dissonance stems from a fundamental tension between the rhetoric of freedom and the reality of US foreign policy objectives. The US government, Chomsky contends, often prioritizes what it perceives as stability over the messy and unpredictable nature of genuine democracy. This stability, however, frequently translates into supporting regimes that are anything but democratic. Dictatorships, military juntas, and authoritarian governments have all received US backing, often with devastating consequences for the people living under their rule. This support takes many forms: military aid, economic assistance, and diplomatic cover. By propping up these regimes, the US government ensures the protection of its own strategic and economic interests, even if it means sacrificing the democratic aspirations of those it claims to champion. Chomsky argues that the US government's ability to maintain this double standard hinges on the complicity of the media. He posits that the media, far from acting as a watchdog, often serves as a mouthpiece for the government, uncritically disseminating its narratives and justifying its actions. This process of manufacturing consent, as Chomsky terms it, relies on shaping public perception. By controlling the information that reaches the public, the government and its allies in the media can frame complex geopolitical situations in a way that favors their interests. The result is a public that is often ill-informed about the true nature of US foreign policy and its consequences. This lack of awareness, Chomsky argues, allows the government to operate with a significant degree of impunity, perpetuating a cycle of intervention and destabilization in the name of democracy. The 1973 coup in Chile, which saw the democratically elected socialist government of Salvador Allende overthrown by a US-backed military junta led by Augusto Pinochet, stands as a stark example of Chomsky's thesis in action. Allende's government, while posing no direct military threat to the United States, represented a challenge to US economic interests in the region. His socialist policies, including the nationalization of key industries, were seen as a threat to the prevailing neoliberal economic order that the US sought to maintain. The US government, under the Nixon administration, actively worked to destabilize Allende's government through a combination of economic sanctions, covert operations, and support for opposition groups. The culmination of these efforts was the brutal military coup that ushered in a period of brutal repression under Pinochet's dictatorship. The Chilean coup serves as a chilling reminder of the lengths to which the US government has been willing to go to protect its perceived interests, even at the expense of democracy and human rights. Section 5, Case Study Nicaragua and the Sandinistas. Another compelling case study that Chomsky examines is the United States' involvement in Nicaragua during the 1980s. The Sandinista National Liberation Front, a leftist revolutionary group, overthrew the US-backed Somoza dictatorship in 1979, promising to bring about social justice and economic equality. The Sandinistas' socialist leanings and their close ties to Cuba and the Soviet Union made them a target for the Reagan administration, which was deeply committed to combating the spread of communism during the Cold War. The US government, through the CIA, began funding and arming the Contras, a counter-revolutionary group composed of former Somoza loyalists and other opponents of the Sandinista government. This support for the Contras, which included training, financing, and supplying them with weapons, fueled a brutal civil war that devastated Nicaragua. The Contras, accused of widespread human rights abuses, waged a campaign of terror against the Sandinista government and its supporters. The US involvement in Nicaragua, like its intervention in Chile, demonstrates how the Cold War provided a convenient pretext for the United States to intervene in the affairs of sovereign nations, often backing authoritarian regimes and undermining democratically elected governments that challenged US hegemony. Section 6. The Global South as a Pawn. Chomsky's analysis extends beyond specific case studies to encompass a broader critique of US foreign policy towards the Global South. He argues that the US government has consistently viewed developing countries through the lens of its own strategic and economic interests, often at the expense of the needs and aspirations of the people living in these regions. The Global South, with its vast reserves of natural resources and its growing markets, has long been seen as a crucial battleground for US hegemony. The US government, Chomsky argues, has sought to maintain its dominance in these regions through a variety of means, including military interventions, economic sanctions, and support for authoritarian regimes that are willing to align themselves with US interests. This exploitative relationship, Chomsky contends, has had devastating consequences for the Global South, perpetuating poverty, inequality, and instability. He argues that true democracy and development in these regions will remain elusive as long as the US government continues to prioritize its own narrow interests over the needs of the global majority. Section 7. Criticisms and counter-arguments. Chomsky's work, while widely influential, has not been without its critics. Some have accused him of being overly critical of the United States and of ignoring the complexities of international relations. Others argue that his focus on US foreign policy overlooks the role of other actors and factors in shaping global events. One of the most common criticisms leveled at Chomsky is that he is anti-American. However, Chomsky has consistently rejected this label, arguing that his critique of US foreign policy stems from a deep-seated belief in the ideals of democracy and justice. He argues that true patriotism lies in holding one's government accountable for its actions, even when those actions are unpopular or difficult to confront. Another criticism is that Chomsky oversimplifies complex geopolitical situations. Critics argue that his focus on US agency overlooks the role of other actors and factors in shaping global events. They contend that international relations are rarely black and white, and that the US government often faces difficult choices in a world of competing interests. While these criticisms are important to consider, they do not diminish the significance of Chomsky's work. His relentless critique of US foreign policy has forced a much-needed conversation about the role of the United States in the world and the gap between its rhetoric and its actions. Section 8, the enduring relevance of, despite being published over 3 decades ago, remains strikingly relevant today. The patterns of US intervention that Chomsky identifies, the support for authoritarian regimes, the use of military force, the manipulation of public opinion, continue to shape global events. From the ongoing wars in the Middle East to the rise of authoritarianism around the world, the legacy of US foreign policy is impossible to ignore. Chomsky's work provides a valuable framework for understanding these contemporary challenges, urging us to critically examine the narratives we are told about US power and its impact on the world. The book's enduring relevance is a testament to Chomsky's prescient analysis and the enduring power of critical thought. In an age marked by information overload and political polarization, serves as a vital reminder of the importance of questioning authority, challenging dominant narratives, and demanding accountability from those in power. Section 9. Conclusion. Noam Chomsky's is a searing indictment of US foreign policy, exposing the hypocrisy at the heart of American power. Through meticulous research and incisive analysis, Chomsky dismantles the myth of the United States as a benevolent force for democracy, revealing a pattern of intervention and destabilization that has often had devastating consequences for people around the world. The book's enduring relevance lies in its ability to illuminate the continuity of US foreign policy, from the Cold War to the present day. The patterns of intervention that Chomsky identifies, the support for authoritarian regimes, the use of military force, the manipulation of public opinion, continue to shape global events, making his work as vital today as it was when it was first published. Stands as a call to action, urging us to confront the uncomfortable truths about US power and to demand a foreign policy that is grounded in the principles of democracy, justice, and human rights. In an age of increasing global interconnectedness, the need for a critical and informed citizenry has never been greater. Chomsky's work provides us with the tools to become those citizens, challenging us to think critically, question authority, and demand a more just and equitable world.